Welcome to a short reflection by Sebastian Mahfoud on Canto 22 of Dante's Purgatorio. Virgil, Statius, and Dante ascend from the 5th Cornice to the 6th, passing the Angel of Moderation in their climb, who lightens Dante's load by one less P, so that he only has 2 remaining on his forehead. They reach the ledge on which is expiated the vice of gluttony. As we saw below in the 3rd circle of hell, the gluttons were those whose consumption was so disordered that they literally couldn't see God past their stomachs. In this ledge, then, are those gluttons who saw and understood who God is some time prior to their deaths, and cried out for his mercy in the transformation of their character. Dante keeps himself behind Virgil and Statius, who have formed a mutual adoration society in their speaking of one another. For Virgil had learned of Statius's regard for him from Juvenal, who brought tidings of him after his own death, which Ciardi notes as having occurred in 130 A.D. Statius himself had died around 96 A.D., roughly 34 years earlier than did Juvenal, so from 96 A.D. to 1300 A.D. he spent roughly 1204 years waiting to ascend to paradise. Since he only spent 500 years of his time repaying a debt on the 5th Cornice, the question naturally occurs to us as to what he was doing those other 700 years. The answer is revealed momentarily. First, Virgil asks how it was that Statius had ended up with avarice in his breast. Statius replies that he wasn't in there for avarice, but for its opposite, prodigality, and that he'd been saved from the infernal joust in the 4th circle of hell by Virgil's own words. "To what do you not drive man's appetite, O cursed gold lust?" He says it was only then that he understood that a man's hands could spread their wings too wide in spending, and repented immediately of his fault. It's at this point that Virgil asks the million-dollar question that leads us to our knowledge of how the rest of Statius's time had been spent. He asked, "How is it that you were saved?" Statius responds that it was Virgil himself who saved him. "You were the lamp that led me from that night," he explains to Virgil, referring to Virgil's 4th eclogue of his Bucolics, in which Virgil had written the following: "A new birth has been given, justice returns, and the first age of man, and a new progeny descends from heaven. You, Virgil, were as one who leads through a dark track holding the light behind, useless to you, precious to those who followed at your back." Virgil's teaching so resonated with the teaching of a new kind of street preacher that Statius immediately leapt into baptism. Virgil, unable to save himself, inspired someone else to twice turn toward the good. Statius, out of fear though for the Christian persecutions, hid his light under a basket, and spent 400 of his purgatorial years racing around the ledge of sloth with the rest of it, Ciardi surmises, spent at the mouth of the Tiber or in ante-purgatory. At this point in their conversation, the poets come upon a great tree bearing delectable fruit. It's an offshoot of the tree of good and evil that will be found in the garden. Its branches are so high that no one can climb it. From its center it cries the whip. The first comes from Mary, and it's the second whip we've seen that is drawn from the wedding at Cana, the first being on the ledge of envy, where she cries out, "They have no wine." Here, the tree says, "Mary thought more of what was due the joy and honor of the wedding feast than of her mouth, which still speaks prayers for you." It's interesting to note that this image from the life of Mary follows a commandment, "You shall not eat of the fruit," which is appropriate here considering the nature of the tree. The tree continues with 4 more whips: the matrons of ancient Rome who did not drink wine, Daniel's determination not to defile himself with the king's wine and meat, the natural state of man in which he ate as hunger directed him, and not in the excess done by those following the refinement of the palate with gourmet meals and fermented drinks, and finally, John the Baptist's diet of honey and locusts. It's interesting here that 3 of these whips deal with the drinking of wine, and the corollary to Mary's whip from the second ledge is that the guests at the marriage feast had no wine and were in need of some. The meaning here, though, is plain. It's not eating and drinking that get us into trouble, but doing so out of all moderation, an act that leads not only to gluttony, but also to drunkenness, which is part of this vice. So this one little canto has given us a lot to think about. If gluttony is the vice, then abstinence is the virtue, and this virtue could as easily be applied to the ledge of avarice below as it could to the ledge of lust above. Likewise, the virtue of moderation that governs the avaricious and prodigals below would be at home both here and on the ledge above. On the ledge above, the virtue opposing lust is chastity, which also bears some affinity with its companion virtues at the top of this mountain. These sins, after all, are all clustered in triptych fashion as excesses of love for material creation, so what is needed is to guard against excessive indulgence. In response to this, we should begin now, if we haven't done so already, exercising proper stewardship over our material possessions, our eating and drinking habits, and, as we'll see, our sexual desires. This period of fasting and Lent is an excellent way for us to begin developing these habits, and the accomplishment will lie in how well we're able to maintain this kind of Lenten regulation over our appetites when we once again return to ordinary time.